Nice to see you all. Unicorn Grocery. So there's 68 of us, and we are all directors of the business. We've been like that since day one, from when there was just the original 6 members right up till today. And everybody in the business multitasks. So we have a mixture of shop floor and administrative work. So for me, that's like quite an interesting mixture of stuff. I do a lot of work with our chilled and frozen produce team. So I'm on the shop floor, in the big fridge out the back, splitting deliveries, topping up the freezer and the chiller, and a lot of general sort of shelf stacking and serving customers on the till. But as well as that, I oversee our international fund, which is something I absolutely love about my job. I get to liaise with projects all around the world and support the membership to make decisions on funding applications. So every year we put aside an amount equivalent to 5% of the previous year's wage bill, 4% fund, so named as it's 4% of that pot. Which is about £75,000 this year, and we distribute that to projects that are, well, like-minded projects really, people working hard to make positive change in their communities, fighting against sort of unfair global trade, unsustainable agriculture, poverty, and there's loads of fantastic projects that we work with. So that's just like a couple of hours of my time a week, but it's something I really love about my job. And I'm also involved with the structure team and the Sociocracy implementation group, of which we'll hear more in a minute. And I have some orders that I do for different bits of the business. I look after the seeds, the gardening section. So we all have this really nice mix of things that we do. We've got a flat wage structure, so everybody's on exactly the same hourly rate. So it doesn't matter whether you're sort of overview of the finance team when you're doing the annual accounts, or whether you're mostly stacking shelves downstairs, you all earn the same. And I think that's sort of fundamentally important to who we are and how we operate. We have a flat management structure, so there's no formal hierarchy. We've never instituted a management committee or anything like that. And we use consensus decision making in our members' meetings, and that works pretty well. So we're not looking to shake that up really. We're quite happy with how it all goes at membership level. I've got a little video. I'm really hoping you're going to be able to hear the sound as well. This is just a minute and a half, and it's a little flavour of Unicorn. We just made this, well, a colleague just made this a couple of months ago to share with a project in Rojava in Syria. So we're taking part in this twinning project to link with a women's co-op out there. So we sent them this.
Welcome to Unicorn. Everything is good. Thank you very much. Okay, so yeah. Oh.
Yes, please. Not yet.
I'm not so like glass.
Okay, so a little bit about how we've evolved as a co-op. So we started in 1996. There were 6 people back then. So I guess it started as one circle. We sort of think about it as it's always sort of remained a collective, but we're very much in that sort of one space for making decisions back then. And the initial sort of governing documents for Unicorn and the sort of ethos behind how we started, we had this idea that's remained pretty entrenched over the years actually of decision making being possible, being easy in a human or family sized group of up to about 15 people. So up until 2004, we kept the membership below 15 or at 15. And then in 2004, the business had grown. There was definitely space to take on more members, but there was real concern about how to do that within the system that we had. So at that point, we devolved and we created teams and sort of umbrella teams and sub-teams with a central forum for information sharing. And then from 2004 right up until about 2012-13, which is when I joined the co-op, we had gradual growth and the structure pretty much working well and accommodating new members. Then we had a really sort of rapid period of growth and we pretty much doubled the membership. And at that point, everything was creaking around the edges. We really weren't sure that we could manage to do things the way that we'd been doing them. So almost as soon as I sort of started as a member, I got involved in this structure review. And we did a lot of work. It was really fascinating for me as a new co-op member. Got to interview lots of other co-ops, find out how they did things. We did a lot of work asking members about what they loved about the job, where the difficulties were for them. And we tried to sort of review everything that we'd done up to that point. And we kind of, at that point, decided, well, we didn't really need to do anything radical to the structure. We just needed to kind of work smarter to keep things ticking over and keep our collective ethos. But then moving forward a little bit, 2016, 2017, we realised that things were just going to have to change because a lot of our teams within the structure had reached this sort of more than 15 members. This easy decision-making group had gone. So this is sort of where we're at now. This is a bit of a rough diagram that I did a while ago, sort of explaining how we always say our structure is comprised, which is a wheel analogy. So we have the members' meetings sort of holding the whole with the boundary of decision making there with everybody in the membership. We have the teams with their who are the spokes and they're looking after their particular pieces of the organisation. We've got a central forum which has representatives from teams attending on a fortnightly basis, mainly for information sharing. And then we have projects that sort of sit kind of nowhere in the structure, but they report into forum and also to members' meetings as seems appropriate. So what we've been doing is we've been trying to redesign the collective management structure to accommodate this growing membership, to make sure that everybody's needs are being met, that we've got sort of a good sense of well-being still as things get busier and bigger. So we've been thinking sort of what we really wanted to achieve, and we narrowed that down into the sort of three key areas. One is decision making, and I think all flat structured co-ops think about this. You know, what do we all need to decide together? How can we make sure everybody's voice still counts, but not having everybody involved in too many decisions? Team meeting structures has been like a really big part of the work we're doing, because as they've got bigger, they've become sort of like mini members meetings in their own right, but without the sort of formal consensus process that we use at membership level. So things have got a little bit harder there. And then hidden functions, we realised there was loads of things going on, different things that people did that were kind of hidden out of the actual structure. So we've always had this idea that, you know, formal hierarchy, it's definitely not inevitable. You can grow, you can still keep sort of a collective ethos, but it takes hard work, imagination, perseverance. So Sociocracy, this was something I stumbled across back in 2017. Somebody sent me some information about a webinar on democratic organising in cooperatives, and I went along not knowing anything about it, and it turned out to be part of a series organised by SOFA, and it all sounded fascinating and exciting and really interesting, so we decided to really explore this. And we took a small proposal to our forum just to say, could we have a small budget to learn the basics? And we took part, 6 of us took part in the ELK program. I always call it ELC, but I think it's ELK, so to say, for this understanding of the basic concepts to sort of get some familiarity with it. And the 6 of us loved it. We're really, really excited at the end of this process. So we then last year took a proposal to the membership to say, give us more money, give us more time. And we decided we'd continue with fortnightly meetings for our ELC group, which became the implementation group. 2 of us took part in SALT 7. I'm now part of the Academy program, which is great. And we've been working with Jerry to work on sort of ideas for implementation. And the main thing we've been doing is working with our largest trading team, the Veg Team, to run a trial, a sociocratic trial with them. So I was trying to think, you know, what's the summary of what we loved, what really excited us? And I think for us, the implementation group, it's this really, really strong sense of meetings can be so much better. So having this proper agenda planning where we are really intentional about what it is we're bringing to a circle to co-create, to work on together, you know, why we're bringing it, what we want to get out of bringing it. And we've been spreading this through the co-op, this idea of sort of really clearly indicating on your agendas what you want out of bringing something to a meeting. And that's liberating and freeing and fantastic. Rounds, we love them. Interestingly, very much part of our history. In the early days, everything was decided by rounds, and we were quite excited to see that. So it was kind of like closing the circle, coming back to where we started. And we, you know, our group loves them. Other teams, as they're experimenting with this, people have really responded positively to having rounds. Just, I think that thing that those of you who are familiar with this, just sort of stating the obvious, but making an intentional choice not to go for a debate style meeting where you actually really want to step back and say, no, we're making space for everybody to speak. It's just a really lovely way of kind of reflecting the ethos of cooperatives. The action focus, good enough for now, safe enough to try, that is also really fantastic for us. We have, I think, I don't know, a huge number of things I could think of just off the top of my head, of examples where we spent ages in different meetings at membership level, at forum level, and in teams, debating and talking and thinking about, you know, what's the perfect option. So not striving for perfection, just thinking, can we do this? Can we just give this a go, see what happens, is so liberating. And then just this sort of focus on connection, having opening rounds, they really make a difference. Giving each other feedback more often, sharing what's going on for us. So this is the Veg Team diagram, not the actual Veg Team. We started with them because they'd reached 25 members and they were really struggling with their fortnightly meeting, trying to make it meaningful, trying to include 25 voices. So we set up a trial initially for 3 months, and we started with 4 sub-circles and a central double-linked Veg General Circle. And we then did, having done some work with them, at the end of that 3-month period, we consolidated down into 3 sub-circles, which made a lot more sense. And we had this real focus on being a team member and being a circle member, and what the difference was and how the feedback channels would work to facilitate that. So I was trying to think, well, what's the sort of main challenges that came out of this? And we started off almost artificially. We're thinking, how can we accommodate all of these people, rather than kind of what's the need for circles within this area of the business. So we had 4 sub-circles originally, and that did create some overlap and some lack of clarity. Some members just felt like they really missed the culture of having the full team meeting, even if the meeting was a bit annoying and a bit maddening at times. Just having everybody together in the room was nice. So there was a little bit of a sense of loss there for the connection, and also loss of information flow across the team. But interestingly, we knew that could be something that happened, and we started off a document sort of way back when the trial started to record every instance where lost information meant that a mistake happened on the shop floor or something went wrong. And although we've got this sort of reported loss of information flow, we haven't actually got a single instance of actual loss of information flow. So we've been working with people to sort of try and square that circle, to understand the difference between sort of perception and what's actually happening, and trying to, I suppose, build more of a sense of trust around the process. It definitely took longer than we thought for people to get comfortable with the new style of meeting. And there were some difficulties just linking this sort of sociocratic little bit of unicorn with the rest of it, mostly to do with our rota, which is very complicated. But successes, having these smaller circles, there's been some really, really strong tangible results in terms of the team overall making progress on some of their goals. And we've done 2 lots of evaluation now. And pretty much everybody has said that they feel like there's more engagement and more participation through circle working. Most people are very much in support of it and feel like they enjoy the processes and meetings. Some people still feel like they're taking a while to sort of really get into this, but culture change isn't easy, it's not quick, it's not overnight, so it's nothing that we weren't sort of expecting. And it's also been a really useful learning experience for us, sort of how you devolve decision making and thinking about what criteria you need to decide who should be part of what circle and part of which decisions. And then very pleasingly, the end of the official trial period, after 6 months of doing the trial, there was absolute resounding yes to continuing this. So the circle structure for Veg is now ongoing, not as a trial, but as a reality for their structure. So we took that, you can see Veg here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but we took the learnings from Veg and did a lot of work across the business as a whole, so trying to really narrow down all of the domains for the different teams we have now, thinking through sort of what configurations we might need to make sense and bring out the hidden functions and make sure everything was clearly visible. And this is what we came up with. So this is very much a working draft. This is not sort of what we're taking to members at the moment. Show you this for a second. I won't talk through because it'll probably take us beyond the end of the session. But we found that we've got some difficulties, that probably very specific to Unicorn, but difficulties with double linking. So inevitably, I think a double linked structure creates the need for more meetings. As you go back to this, as you create sort of department level circles, which for us are the green circles, or connecting circles to bring together other teams, you just add to the total number of meetings. And we have a real lack of meeting space to accommodate more meetings. So that's a huge issue for us. Very complicated rota because we all multitask, and the sort of demands of staffing the shop don't really fit well with adding in additional meetings. And we also, we're a business, we have a limit to the number of meeting hours available within our hours budget. And we were looking to sort of streamline that rather than expand it. So we kind of reached a bit of an impasse with this. And we really recognise the potential for some members to end up with quite a significant additional workload if they end up being selected as leaders and delegates even across several levels. So we didn't want that, people being swamped with sort of more work than they have now. So we're just at the very beginning of exploring a network structure instead, with some elements of double linking. But despite the sort of impasse at the moment with the double linking, we think Sociocracy has a huge amount to offer the co-op. So it offers this framework for how to handle further devolution and distributed authority that we've been looking for over the recent years. This sort of real sense of clarity over who's taking which decisions and why they're taking them, which is all back down to being really clear over your domains for different parts of decision making, which for us is just is extremely exciting and also quite liberating to think about things in this way. The decision making processes themselves, so using consent, using lead, do, measure for an action focus, not looking for perfect, that's really, really important and something we love. Meeting tools, for example, doing dimensions, picture forming, proposal shaping, being able to co-create but in quite a structured way. We think that really reflects cooperative values, and it's a really nice way of sort of supporting how we interact with each other in meetings. And then our hope is that time saving will also be possible. If we get this right, we have smaller circles, so less people in each meeting, we should then free up time for people to work together, doing teamwork to make progress on the aims of their circles and their teams. Got some challenges as we've been going through our implementation process. There's definitely quite a lot to learn and to think about, and that takes up a lot of collective headspace. And we know that people, we're a busy co-op, we all have a lot going on, so it's quite a big ask. We've also been thinking about, we all have different learning styles, different communication styles. We don't want to slip into what's been termed sort of militant sociocracy, where you have to follow the process and then feel that if you can't do it all right, that you're somehow making a big problem for the co-op. So we're very mindful of that. And then thinking about facilitation, because we think that's such a crucial piece of doing this well. We have had from some members a sort of sense of loss of the collective coming through, but I'd say that's balanced by many, many more members being excited about this new way of working. So we're trying to find ways to help everybody sort of think about this and all move along together. We have definitely a culture of not wanting to take ownership of decisions where everybody doesn't have a say. So this sort of default mode of pushing things up to either to forum or up to members meetings for decision, that'll be quite interesting. So obviously Sociocracy is trying to go for the opposite, pushing things down into the most sort of devolved level for making decisions. Fighting the desire for perfect, that's always going to be a difficult thing, I think, for us. And then just understanding change as a continuous thing, you know, that when we do get to the point of having a structure that we present to members, that's not going to be it. It's not, right, we're doing Sociocracy, we've done it, finish. We're going to be continually evolving this. So we have in 2 weeks our AGM, where we were able to tip. So we've split this into 3 key areas. One is circle working, which is happening already with the Veg Team, and it's happening a little bit with a couple of other teams at the moment. So agreeing collectively that we want to do this, that we want to form circles of up to 9 members, which is sort of the level we think works for Unicorn. And an emphasis on sort of multitasking in our work, but specialising a little bit more in our decision making. So hoping that we build trust for that. If we have good processes, if you're in maybe slightly fewer circles, but you know that your decision making is really robust in the circles you're in, you can have more trust for other people taking that work in circles that you're not part of. Consent, learning the process, using it, trying to build more of a culture of consent generally. Lead, do, measure, which I've spoken about a little bit already. Good enough for now, safe enough to try, definitely the new mantra at Unicorn. Following that, hoping for a yes, feeling quite confident of a yes, then we know we've got lots of work supporting the new circles, getting them up and running, mapping everything that we have now, and designing the sort of the connecting structure, whatever that ends up looking like, with this networked idea and some double linking, I'm sure. And then the aim would be to bring the other proposal, the actual structure and the changes to our bylaws, either to September or to February next year, members meeting. Okay, so I've talked for quite a long time. So do we have any questions, any thoughts, anything people would like to ask me?
Well done, Abbie. We have a couple of questions in the chat. How do you balance fighting, quote, perfect and people fighting adoption? That can be trouble if people get lazy.
So, yeah, I mean, the desire for perfect and looking for the perfect proposal, the perfect option, is something that I think we have a long history of because of the way that we have practiced consensus decision making at membership level, certainly, that we'll thrash things out until we get somewhere. But I think that we've got such a big interest and uptake in this new way of thinking about looking for things that are good enough for now and safe enough to try, and people seeing tangible results of doing that, making small scale experiments, trying small things out and seeing what happens, that there should be, I'm quite hopeful of, quite a groundswell of momentum for people saying, yes, we want to do this more across the co-op, and therefore sort of rather than fighting adoption of Sociocracy, being quite excited for it.
There's also a question about how discipline or coaching is handled within the collective. For example, somebody who arrives late regularly or doesn't clean and so on.
Big question. So we do have policies around that, and we have a culture of open feedback. It's definitely a culture we are working on, and something that I think probably forever we'll be working on. But for the last 23 years, we've been saying, if you need to say something to somebody about their work, go and do it. Be honest. We're all about open and honest communication, and try and find a space in which you can communicate well about that and own your own sort of piece of it. So sometimes it's you as much as the other person, and not creating sort of we've always said we have a no blame culture. So when things go horribly wrong, which just happens sometimes, somebody mixes the wrong type of rice into an expensive mix in the production room or whatever it is, it's not that person's fault. We just look to how we can learn to make things better collectively. Lateness, we have a policy about. So if you're late, you write it down in the diary in the morning, and all of your different instances of lateness get added up, and you have a small salary deduction if it's over 10 minutes in a quarter. That's a slightly controversial policy, although we've had it for quite a long time. Not everybody writes their lateness down as strictly as others, but I don't say that.
Okay, we just have a couple of minutes. Would you like Abbie to give us maybe a general remark about how Sociocracy is going at Unicorn?
Yeah, so we have, we've been doing loads of work with members. I don't know if I said this properly in the presentation, but of the 68, we've now had, I think, 62 members take part in training sessions with me. So half-day training, just to go over some of the basics and to use rounds for doing the exploration of sort of what comes up for you and what your reaction is to different elements of sociocracy. And it's overwhelmingly positive. I think people who have started with concerns have felt, okay, there's space within this for my concerns to be listened to, and there's space within this this overall ethos and approach for us to still be individuals with our own ideas and bring that to the way we work in the co-op. I just did a training last week, and one of my colleagues who was part of that said that he'd been slightly shying away from involvement in the sociocracy stuff because he had this dystopian vision of some very hippie level nightmare for the co-op for the future. But by the end of it, he felt really, really positive about how sociocracy could improve things. And for him, he had a sense that we have at the moment tipped the balance into a lot of discussion around structure and decision making, and the business has, you know, many needs, and he was concerned that we'd all end up sitting around talking about things in circles rather than splitting deliveries and getting things away and getting stock out on the shop floor. And we talked about that, and we discussed that at the moment we are in a space where we're using a lot of collective time to think about structure and how we communicate, but the outcomes that we can already see from that in some of our teams and the hopes we have for how that spreads across the co-op should mean that there is more stuff making it straight to the shelf, and deliveries are being split more effectively, and we're all taking more ownership over our work. So I'd say pretty positively. I mean, I realise I've taken a big risk publicly doing this 2 weeks before the AGM, at which point members say yes or no to the Sociocracy proposal. But nobody has come forward yet to say that they are in a position of non-support. So we will see how that pans out.